It's really uncomfortable. So, welcome back everyone. This is the first session after lunch, so I'm expecting a little bit of tiredness from you. But as they announced, my name is Yuksel. I'm a full-time lawyer from Turkey. I'm passionate about voice technology and voice assistants in general. And that's why I became a Google developer expert on Google Assistant. Google developer experts are not paid by Google. Let's just get it out of the way now. We just try to help the communities learn the products better, and in return, Google supports us in various different ways. Today, we're going to be talking about Google Assistant and the different ways that you can use the Google Assistant for your brand or product. Now, how many people in this room are familiar with the voice technology? Do you have any digital assistants? Don't be afraid, just raise your hands. Great, great. So you already know that the paradigm is shifting. Now, since this is not my full-time job, I have been experimenting with a lot of different technologies and a lot of different areas of technology. Like I developed games for a while, I developed mobile applications, I developed web applications. But nothing stuck with me as much as the voice technology did. And the other day, I figured out why. I went to my parents' house. Since we were living together for most of my life, they were making me do the techie things in the house. They were making me reply emails. They were making me fix their computers. And now, ever since I moved out, they have been trying to get me for dinner so that they can still use me for their tech purposes. When I was at my parents' house, my father said he wants to prepare some presentation, so he wanted me to help him with that. I helped him, and at that moment, he got a text message. He took his phone out, and he looked at it like this, like fathers does, and he said, "Can you reply your uncle and write him this and this message?" And I took his phone, I replied, and at that moment, I realized that I have been a voice assistant my entire life. That's why I love developing voice assistants so much. So this paradigm shift is not actually something new. Every 10 years, computer world goes through a change. First, there were mainframes. I don't remember them. I have never used one. Then came the desktop. It came into our houses. They were everywhere. And then came the internet. That was the real change I remember because I was a kid in the early 2000s and internet was the big thing. Then in 2007, iPhone was introduced, and with the technology of capacitive screens and the new multi-touch features of iPhone, they revolutionized the user experience in a better way, so mobile revolution was there. And then now, after 10 more years, since 2017, we have a different kind of user experience, a voice user experience. Right now, we can talk to our devices, talk to our phones, talk to our home devices, just like we would talk to each other, and they understand what we want to do. This is the next step in the human-machine interaction. Okay. So where does Google Assistant fit in? As you already know, Google Assistant is a personal assistant that can reply your questions, that can answer your questions, that can control your smart home devices if you have any, and it might make your life easier. But what does this mean for a developer? It means that you can now develop for 1 million or more devices. You can put your application, you can put your brand, you can put your product on 1 million devices throughout the world, and you can do it in a way that users can interact with them only by using their conversation skills, which every user already has. There's a little bit of delay with the with this remote. Okay. Google Assistant currently supports 30 languages, over 80 countries. It supports Russian, I know it supports Turkish, and it supports a lot of different locales for these languages, so it's widely available. If you want to start developing for voice platforms, Google Assistant might be the right way to go because it reaches a lot of devices and a lot of people. It has 3 main parts. First part is the assistant itself. It has its own persona. It's the one conversation between Google and the user. You cannot interfere with this. It's their own product. The second is the devices with Google Assistant. These are the home devices that I mentioned, but they're also third-party devices. And there are now smart speakers and smart displays that will allow the users to talk to them through Google Assistant. And the third one is the Actions on Google platform. And this is my main specialty. This is the platform that allows you to develop voice applications, that allows you to put your application on the Google Assistant, just like you would put it on an Android or iOS device. So you can use Assistant in a variety of different ways. For example, if you're a content owner, if you're a content creator, you can put your content on Assistant just by using structured data. Or if you're an Android app developer, you can integrate Assistant with your app in a certain way. If you're an innovator, if you like to experiment like I do, you can start building really good visual applications that can be interacted with voice. And if you're a hardware developer, if you're making your own devices, it doesn't matter if you're mass producing them or not, you can build them to work with Google Assistant. Now, let's see if you're a content creator, how can Google Assistant make your content more accessible? Okay. For example, if you have an FAQ or something like this in your website, on your website, right now, if you're doing any search optimization, you are using search optimization techniques like RSS or LDP JSON, so that your content is crawlable by Google bots in a proper way. If you have news on your website, the Google already shows the news separately from the rest of the search results. Now, this is connected to Assistant. So if you're already using structured data, you can actually integrate it with Google Assistant so that Assistant will know your news, recipes, and can play your podcast directly with voice interaction. You don't have to do anything that you're not already doing. For example, for podcasts, it's just simple RSS. This is the industry standard that's been widely used for a very long time. So you don't have to do anything new. You don't have to learn anything new. You can just integrate your podcast with Assistant just by using RSS. If you have how-to guides, especially if you have how-to videos, you can easily integrate them to Google Assistant. So when users are talking to their phones and watching your how-to video, they can say, okay, G, go to the next step, and the next step shows up. And they can say, okay, G, repeat that last step, and the last step is repeated. And the funny thing about this is that you don't have to write a single line of code. It is as easy as just changing a spreadsheet and putting timestamps of your videos into that spreadsheet. This is that easy. You can also use a similar method for FAQs. If you have FAQs for your corporate website, for example, you should already be using structured data so that Google understands that some of the questions are important for users and the answers automatically pop up in Google search results. Now, it's directly connected to the Assistant, and if a user asks, does this company have a refund policy? And if you have used the correct structured data method, the Assistant will just read out the answer for that FAQ automatically. You don't have to do anything special for it to work with Assistant. This is the LD-JSON for the FAQs. Okay, app actions. This was the most asked question that I got from my speeches, because a lot of people are already developing for mobile platforms. They have already published Android applications and they have already published iOS applications, so they were curious if they could integrate what they already have with Google Assistant. Before App Actions, before this May, I always said, no, this is a separate platform. But now you have a way to integrate your Android applications with Google Assistant, because right now the app space is very, very competitive. Like, users download the apps for very, very expensive. Like, if you want to get a new user as a company, you have to spend approximately $4 for each user. This is the marketing cost and the development cost in total. But the users forget about your app after 3 days. The research suggests that after 3 days, you lose 77% of your users. So in a pool of a lot of application, in a pool of these icons, how do you stand out? Well, you stand out by making it easier to reach your application. And what better way to make it easier than using users' voice? This is what App Actions allows you to do. It can connect with over 1 billion Android devices, and it can connect your Android application to Google Assistant smoothly. Let's see how this works. Today, if you want to use an application to build your s'mores, are you familiar with the concept of s'mores? Like I'm sure some of you are. So you select the cracker on the application. First, you find the application, which is a challenge on its own. Look at all these apps. Then you select the cracker. Then you select the marshmallow. And then you select the chocolate. And then you select how you like it to be toasted. You define how many, and you review your order, and then confirm your order. And now you have s'mores. But there is an easier way. If you use app actions, you can use direct intent to fulfill users' request. Now, what do I mean? I mean that user can just go and say, order 1 milk chocolate well done from S'mores and S'mores, and user's request will automatically be turned into an order in your application without actually going through the steps at all. And then users just can confirm it and then get their S'mores. This is how easy it is to use an Android application and integrate it with Google Assistant. Another example of this is the Nike Run Club. If you want to exercise, it's already hard enough, right? I mean, you want to start it as soon as possible. If users go and say, okay, G, start my run with Nike Run Club, it automatically opens the Nike Run Club application and starts the run without ever touching the screen. This is beautiful, because this can also run with Google users' headphones. This is also an advantage. Right now, app actions are limited for built-in intents, but there's a good reason for that. Built-in intents handle the natural language processing for you. So you don't have to deal with the different ways of users want their s'mores, or you don't have to deal with the different ways that users can put start my run. They can say start my run, let's start exercising. You don't have to deal with the taxonomy of it. Google deals with it through built-in intents. For example, start exercise built-in intent has a lot of different ways that can be communicated to a device. I can say start my exercise, I can say start exercising, I can say I want to go to the gym, or I am at the gym. I can say a lot of different things that mean actually the same thing. But built-in intents figure this out for me. I don't have to do any machine learning. I don't have to write them all. I write them on my own. I don't even have to train the machine learning model myself. And this is the code to connect Android application to Google Assistant. Only 2 lines of code, one there and here. So if any Kotliners out there. Okay, so if you're a hardware developer, if you're making smart home devices for other developers or directly for consumers, how can you put them on Google Assistant? Google Assistant Google has a feature called Home Graph. Home Graph is basically Google knowing every device and their traits so that they can connect to each other. They know their situations, so they can communicate in a meaningful way. With smart home integration features of Google Assistant, you can connect them. You can connect your devices to Assistant and make the user say, okay, dim the lights to 70%, and Assistant will automatically get this request, again, without you doing any natural language processing, and it will send a data to your servers, or with the local home SDK, you can do it locally too. So this was one of the biggest announcements at I/O. You can do it locally. If you're hardware developers, you might be producing one of these types of devices. There are a lot of types, and your devices might have different traits, meaning that their different situation can be recognized by Home Graph. What about I wanted to build something from scratch? But if I'm not manufacturing any smart home devices, I don't have any Android applications, or I want to build specifically voice-first experiences for the voice platforms, what would I do then? This is what we call a conversational action. In conversational actions, users speak, and then their speech is translated to text, and then that text is connected to your action. But that's not so simple. See, this is the flowchart of a simple action. With a conversational action, you get the speech-to-text from user, and then just invoke your action, and that action is invoked with whatever user said, and you get the text of user's utterance, what the user said, on your server. That's okay, but what if user said something like this? Well, it's kind of cold outside, so I'd like something to warm me up. I'd like a hot soup, and I want it fast. Can you imagine writing a regular expression to understand what the user meant. I mean, you can get this data to your server, but you cannot easily understand it. This is a challenging task. So Google actually helps you with that. They have a product called Dialogflow, and if you want to build conversational experiences for Google Assistant, you can use Dialogflow to handle all the natural language processing for you. Again, you don't have to do anything special to understand what the user said. Dialogflow has two main features. One of them is intent matching. This means that whatever user is trying to do, whatever user's goal, Dialogflow understands it for you. Because you just write some examples to Dialogflow, it automatically matches user's intent to the examples you have written before without writing a single line of code. The other feature of Dialogflow is entity extraction. Now, for example, here, okay, users might say, talk to personal chef and start your action, and then you welcome the user and say, hello, I'm personal chef, how can I help you with? Or what are you in the mood for? And user might say, it's kind of cold outside, so I'd like something hot. Now, we know that user wants to drink something, but we don't know what kind of drink he wants. Dialogflow can extract the hot parameter for you, and this is what we call an entity extraction. So these two features makes it easier for your servers to understand what users want, because you don't have to do the natural language processing. Dialogflow just does it for you, and for free, so you can just focus on conversation design and making the voice applications experience as good as possible. You don't have to deal with anything technical. This is, right now, my favorite feature of Google Assistant, and it's called an interactive canvas. Now, the device you're seeing here is called a smart display. It has a screen, just like a tablet would do. It's a big screen, but it's also accessible with voice. What I mean is that it responds to OKG command, and it wakes up and waits for your command. Now, if you have a screen this big, you might want to leverage it. And interactive canvas is the best way to leverage the screen. You can show rich visuals to users by using the web technologies that you already know and love, like HTML and CSS. You can build rich visuals, and you can create games with them. For example, there's a game right now called Are You Feeling Lucky? You can play it on your phone's Google Assistant today, and you can interact with the screen by tapping, or you can interact it with your voice. This is really something what we call voice-first gaming. It makes gaming accessible, it makes it more fun, and it's another way of using digital assistants to change user experience in a field that has never done this before. There were not voice games before Interactive Canvas. I mean, there were, but there was not rich visuals. So this is the life cycle of a conversational action. You have a fulfillment. You have the device that users interact. This is usually a Google Home device or a smart speaker or a smart display. You have your Dialogflow agent that does the entity extraction and intent matching for you, and you have your fulfillment, your server or serverless infrastructure. Users speak, it interacts with Dialogflow, Dialogflow sends you what users want to do, and then you respond with the proper response, or you get the user's order. With Interactive Canvas, you respond with an HTML response, and then a web application is triggered on the smart display. Now, when a web application is triggered, users are seeing rich visuals on the screen, but you cannot still interact with them unless you install Interactive Canvas API. I know this got a little bit too technical. How many of you develop for web? How many of you use JavaScript daily? Okay, not too less, not too few. That's great. This is important because Interactive Canvas API just has like two methods, and it allows you to capture what the user said, capture the current state of the Dialogflow agent, and refresh the screens accordingly. So you can use one of the popular reactive programming frameworks and build a web application that can be interacted with voice. Now, before my conclusion, I will take the questions, whether they come from Slide.io or whether you want to ask it yourselves. I will take a few questions now.